discussion is about representation and how the whole story about Africa is just one-sided. And for me, I see myself as an African child, an African ambassador, and I'm so proud of myself as an African that everywhere I go, I make sure that that part of me, that identity is very known. And for anybody who tries to find out about where I come from and whether I had malaria or any of those diseases or whatever is portrayed, I tell them that I don't see a difference between my life in America and my life back at home. What do I have here in America that I didn't have when I was at home? Back at home in Ghana, people use 5 mobile phones. You can attest to that, Sean. Yeah. My mom has a mobile phone she uses for work and then personal. She has 2 lines for work and then 1 for her personal life, her private life. And she's not the only person. And it's not as if she doesn't need it. She needs it. She receives calls on them and texts and does everything equally. There are cars. I have 5 siblings who all drive. They work. And what else? Is it internet? I had it at home. I had all these things when I was at home. There's nothing, absolutely nothing different that I can think of that I have here in America that I can say that I was deprived of it when I was back at home. So these are the stories, these are the things that we're talking about. And one of the things that really helped me was the fact that I had to come here and then I had to write a test like TOEFL before I get admission letter or something. Well, guess what? I've spoken English language as my language, my second language, right down from school. And my first degree was in English language. It's just me. There's so many people, so many African countries, especially in West Africa.
English?
No, my second language. My first language is not English. I have a Kenyan language. Yeah. So there's so many countries on the west of Africa, so many, even in Africa itself, that have their national language as English, but then you come here and you have to write such frustrating exams like TOEFL and so many others just to prove that you can speak English language when we write and speak English language back at home. So the point here is that why do you just focus on the negative part of Africa all the time? How many of us have seen African programs or African movies or African media content in as much as we find Western media content back at home? There are people back at home that do not even watch African movies, but they watch American movies and outside Western movies. And these movies give you some kind of heavenly paradise kind of impression about the West, which is not the case when you have the opportunity to experience it. And one other thing that I want to talk about is the fact that I think that the onus lies with us as African children in the sense of us as belonging to the continent, that as academics, it's also our responsibility. I've done so many researches that it was so difficult for me to come by African literature, something written about Ghana, about Nigeria, about Cote d'Ivoire or something. So because of that, I had to abandon my research. And for me, personally, as an African child, as an academic, I have made a promise to myself that in as much as I can, I'm not working with data from anywhere apart from Africa. If I don't get it from Ghana, it has to be some other African country. If I don't write it, if you don't write it, who is going to write it? That's how come they'll write all those horrible stories about Africa. So it's about time that each one of us who claim to be either associated with Africa or you are African, start thinking about what you can do as an individual to help the continent. I recently did a study and I made my sister collect data for me from Ghana. She traveled all the way to the US, not necessarily to bring me the data, but fortunately she's coming for a conference. And so I got the data and then I wrote my research. And I just sent out the paper for publication. If it doesn't get published, whichever journal, I'm going to send around all the journals that I know until it gets out there for publication. And I just hope that as I've spoken, if you're in academia, if you're learning, you'd also get to do some of these things, because it's the only way. If I don't write it, if I don't publish it, if I don't put it out there in the journal, some other kind of a person who doesn't have an idea of the story, who doesn't know what Africa is like, is going to write a different story. So aside talking and grumbling and ranting about it, let's start doing something very practical. If you're here, you're a PhD student, you're thinking of dissertation, start thinking about Africa. Start thinking about working with data from Africa. Start thinking about getting publications, get it out there for people to read. Even if they don't read, they'll find something. Because if you're doing research, it's very disheartening that you can go as far back as 1980s and 1970s. Like really, how can I do research with such outdated data? And then sometimes you send out an article for publication and one of the reviews that you get is that you're using outdated data. Well, how am I supposed to get 2011, 2012 data when nobody is publishing? You have to let me get published because the only data that I can find is in the 1980s. So let's all take it up on ourselves. These discussions are very good, but it's about time we thought about how practical we can get with moving forward with the continent. Because trust me, nobody outside that beautiful African map is going to do it for us, except those of us who are in that map. So let's think about it and begin to live very practical lives. Thank you.
You still want to hear my point?
Yes.
Okay, well, the thing is this. If you're talking about NGOs, well, it's a different ballgame for me. Because NGOs are non-governmental organizations, so whatever they do is purely humanitarian. But what I said, when I say we don't need them, I mean we don't need the aids. Yeah. Why I say so is, you see, at times these things, there's more to these things than it meets the eyes. You know, I can just call you and say, I see the potential in you, you can make $1,000 every month. But because I want to use you, I'm going to give you $100 every month. But because as you are right now, you're not even worth more than $1. So if I give you $100 every month, you know, it's going to be so big in your eyes and you don't even care. You understand? So most of these countries, I mean, unfortunately, have been, you know, they have been impoverished by the West in the name of giving aid. An example is my country. My country is the eighth largest producer of oil in the world. What does that kind of country need aid for? Nothing. But you know, because there's a saying from my tribe that says, no matter how much you have, it can never be enough for you. So I've seen, you know, I'm getting the aid, it's free, I have nothing to lose. You know, I always run up to you, cup in hand, to collect it from you. When I'm back here, I have something that is worth more than, you know, 100 of your aid. But because you're interested in what is in the backyard, you know, you just give me these, you just shower some single on my face, and you know what, let me just go behind you and, you know, tap the resources behind you. So there are some countries that are, you know, very poor. When I mean very poor, they have nothing under there. But those countries in Africa are very few that have nothing under them, and no single mineral resources. There are very few countries like that in Africa. So, and if you say you want to help someone with aid, there should be like, you know, like there should be like a time frame, you know, after so time, then you're on your own. But when you keep giving these countries this aid, they're never going to learn. They always want to crawl. You make them lazy, you impoverish the citizens, the government becomes so corrupt because all they just look up to is your aid. So I'm not talking about the NGOs now. You know, the NGOs are doing a good job. And funny enough, you know, I have very reputable NGOs from the West. Yes, you know, we appreciate them a lot. But at the same time, you know, when it comes to politics, there's a lot involved. Look at a country like Egypt, collect $1 billion every year in the defense aid from America. And Egypt has one of the strongest military in Africa. They don't need that. But obviously, you know the politics of Israel and the Middle East. That is why Egypt will always get that forever. I don't think it's going to stop anytime soon. So most of these things, you know, you call aids to me, are actually, they just make the leaders lazy and more corrupt. So that's my own point. I mean, I'm not saying the NGOs are doing a bad job or whatever. I'm just talking about, I find you don't just need these things.
Okay, so just for clarification, you were saying that African American countries do not need the aid as compared to how Patrick was saying we both need each other to function.
Well, we both need each other to function, yes, no doubt. We obviously need the West. They are, you know, by far technologically advanced and all that. So we need that part of them. But we're going to pay for it. If it's business, then nobody's going to take advantage of us. If I tell you, you know what, I'm bringing this to the table, this is what I want. That is what Dubai does. What is the name? The Sheikh is going to call all the architects from France and England. What is the tallest building in the world? Oh, the Petronas Towers in Malaysia, the Taipei Tower in the Taipei, Thailand. Okay, you know what, can you double it for me? This is money speaking. If you go to Dubai today, half of the workers there are from the West. He pays them. They have the money. So this is business we're talking, and you respect me. If I pay you, you respect me. You can't disrespect me. So that's exactly my point.
Okay. Now we're going to go to this side. I know some work some hands up. Yes, sir.
Yeah, I certainly do agree that I don't like how the Western media portrays Africa, and but I feel like we as Africans we do have to be realistic at some point. We have to take responsibility, and we have to empower ourselves. I mean, I didn't know about the fact that Nigeria produced about 500 billion worth of oil, and just $5 billion was invested into the country. That by itself just shows you, you know, we're not looking out for ourselves. You know, if we want to be portrayed as a good people, we need to, you know, empower ourselves. We can put money, you know, I feel like our leaders are failing us pretty much. If we, you know, we have rich people in Africa too. If they take that responsibility to, like, you know, take those businesses back to their country and, you know, like, empower their own people, and, you know, we can have our own media, like large media groups, and, you know, they can portray what, you know, what we want them to portray, you know what I mean? So pretty much, I feel like we just have to take responsibility, and we just have to, you know, empower ourselves, and we have to look for ourselves pretty much.
Yes.
I think everything had already had.
Kind of going off of what you mentioned, and I don't know your name, and also even what Tubbs was touching on. First of all, poverty, obviously, it's not limited to just Africa. Poverty, it's a human issue. So whether you in North America, South America, Europe, Asia, Africa, Australia, it doesn't matter where you're at. Poverty impacts all 6. Antarctica, I don't think no one lives there, so I'm going to say 6 of the 7 continents.
They gonna come for you.
Well, what 7, all 7 continents. So I'll acknowledge Antarctica. But as much as we speak about the, both the rich and the poor, I want to just like list off just quick information speaking about the United States, about the social stratification, because even though I'm sure that there's rich people prevalent throughout the entire continent of Africa, there's also absolute poverty that you can't overlook. Even within the United States, 30.5 million individuals, most women and children, are living below the poverty level, and I think roughly 12 million is absolute poverty within the United States itself. So don't think that poverty is just international. Poverty is prevalent in first world countries as well. So just in the United States within itself, the richest 1% controls 36% of the wealth in this country, and the richest 10% controls 90% of the wealth in this country. So think about 10%, 90%. So the rest that is left between the 1%, 37% is concentrated within what we would refer to as the 1%. And then the rest, we like to speak about the middle class that exists, but really the middle class really doesn't exist. It's really more the haves and the have-nots. And then even those who have, they're living paycheck to paycheck, and they're not that far from losing what they do have because it is a lack of investment. There's huge societal inequalities within the structures of all of our countries. So even when you look at the corruption that exists and within the political institutions, just as much as there's brilliant, smart, there's obviously Africa is the richest in natural resources. That's why everyone was trying to fight on colonizing it, because everyone was fixated on gold, everybody was fixated on diamonds, everybody was fixated on what they could extract from the continent, and obviously it's benefiting everybody else except for the continent within itself. If you want to break down $500 billion exported money going throughout the world, and then $5 billion within Nigeria within itself, it makes no sense. So with that being said, there has to be a sense of empowering yourself by educating yourself and taking accountability and holding those powers that be, holding those political leaders responsible. So if they're stealing from the people, which I'm sure it's going on. I saw this past weekend where there was a protest, particularly the Nigerian protest was speaking about, I guess, a political leader who actually stole, you can correct me because I'm not sure, but he stole $50 billion from the people.
There's nothing more
It
than that.
went missing.
There's nothing more than that.
But the point being is,
Yes,
the reason
got missing, I know you have.
the reason why I'm highlighting that as an example is something as simple as having a demonstration or a protest, whatever it may be, within your, whether you're not in your home necessarily. So obviously I like the fact that you guys are West Virginia University students, but you were still speaking about problems that's going on in Nigeria, and you use the people are focused on you, the media is focusing on you, and it reached multiple outsources. So when it comes to accountability, simple as if people are protesting about it, as far as West Virginia, then it's, and more people took the initiative to speak about the different injustices that is occurring, then then you're forcing people, there's going to be change that's going to eventually take place, but you really have to take accountability. So I'm not saying that rich does not exist, but you can't, you can't deny that poverty is a problem throughout the entire world, and it's not just limited, it's a human problem. As he said, even violence, violence and poverty go hand in hand. It's because people lack resources that they're going to lead to fight, and there's going to be conflict between groups of people. So as individuals, as human beings, regardless of what your background is, you need to educate yourself, and if you're not part of the solution, then you're part of the problem. You need to take initiative to use what talent that you have. We're all talented. Some people are political science, some people are sociology, some people are business, whatever it may be, and using that to empower other people around you so you can see the change that you would like to see.
Okay. Let's go 1, 2, 3, 4. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so I'm very happy to be here this evening, and it's actually very refreshing to me because when I was an undergraduate,